Director Velkus stood in his office high above the main viewing corridors of the Zerathian Galactic Biological Preserve. His 6 limbs trembled slightly as he reviewed the security protocols for the 3rd time that morning. The humans were coming today, real humans from Earth. The legendary Deathworld that had recently joined the galactic community. Velkus had spent 30 years managing the most dangerous creatures in known space. But nothing in his extensive career had prepared him for this moment. The data file on his desk glowed with an ominous red border. Earth's classification stared back at him in bold letters. Class 12 Deathworld. The highest possible rating, a planet so lethal that simply existing there required surviving daily encounters with venomous creatures, aggressive predators, microscopic killers, and environmental hazards that would make most species extinct within a generation. And now, 3 of these Deathworld survivors were coming to tour his facility as part of a diplomatic exchange program. Velkus called his senior staff into the conference room. The team assembled quickly, their various appendages rustling with nervous energy. Head of Security Vorn checked his equipment belt for the 4th time. Medical specialist Lyra kept her healing kit close. Even the normally calm maintenance chief Drax seemed on edge, his scales shifting through anxious color patterns. "They arrive in 1 hour," Velkus announced. "I want triple barriers activated on all exhibits. No one approaches the humans without my explicit permission. Keep them in the safest corridors only. The Thornback Ravager section will be viewed from the observation deck exclusively. Is that understood?" His staff murmured agreement, but Velkus could see the curiosity in their eyes. Everyone had heard stories about humans. How they had evolved alongside massive predators. How their planet contained thousands of species that could kill them in seconds. How they had somehow not only survived but thrived, becoming the dominant species on a world that actively tried to kill everything living on it. Some called humans the galaxy's newest warriors. Others whispered that they might be the most dangerous species ever discovered, hidden behind friendly smiles and strange customs. The shuttle from Earth arrived precisely on schedule. Velkus watched through the viewing port as the small craft docked with the preserve's main receiving bay. His heart pounded in an uneven rhythm. The airlock cycled open with a hiss of equalizing pressure, and then they were there, the humans. 3 of them walking into his station as casually as if they were visiting a market. The first one through wore formal diplomatic attire in shades of blue and gray. He extended his hand in the peculiar human greeting Velkus had studied extensively. "Director Velkus, I'm Peter Hall, Diplomatic Liaison for Earth's Galactic Integration Program. Thank you for hosting us today." Velkus carefully mimicked the handshake, trying not to think about how those forward-facing eyes marked Peter as a predator species. "Welcome to the preserve, Mr. Hall. We are honored by your visit." The second human stepped forward, a woman with dark hair pulled back in a practical style. "Lisa Morgan, xenobiologist. I've been looking forward to this for months. Your preserve houses species I've only read about in databases." Her eyes sparkled with genuine excitement that Velkus found deeply unsettling. She was excited? About creatures that had killed hundreds across multiple worlds? The third human was built more solidly, with the bearing of someone trained in combat. "Jake Bennett, security escort." "Don't worry, Director, I'm just here to make sure these 2 don't get into too much trouble." He smiled, showing his teeth. Velkus suppressed a shudder. Teeth like that belong to a carnivore. "Yes, well, safety is indeed our primary concern," Velkus said, gesturing for them to follow him down the corridor. The Galactic Biological Preserve houses 847 species, many of which are considered extremely dangerous. We have strict protocols in place for your protection. As they walked, Velkus launched into his carefully prepared safety briefing. He explained the containment systems, the emergency procedures, the importance of staying behind all barriers at all times. He detailed the various threat levels, from the relatively manageable Level 3 creatures up to the absolutely lethal Level 10 specimens. He emphasized repeatedly that under no circumstances should anyone approach, touch, or attempt to interact with any creature without explicit permission from trained handlers wearing full protective gear. But halfway through his speech, Velkus realized Lisa was no longer walking beside them. He turned, his primary eyes widening in alarm. She had stopped at the first major exhibit, her face pressed against the transparent aluminum barrier, staring at the creature beyond with an expression of pure wonder. The Thornback Ravager noticed her immediately. The massive beast, easily 3 times the size of a human, shifted its bulk toward the barrier. Its obsidian scales caught the light, and the retractable venomous spines along its back rose slightly in a threat display. This creature had killed 17 trained handlers across 3 different worlds. It had wiped out settlements. It required 7 layers of containment and could only be approached by handlers in full armored suits after heavy sedation. "Ms. Morgan," Velkus practically shrieked, rushing toward her. "Step away from the barrier immediately. That creature is extremely dangerous." But Lisa didn't move. Instead, she made a soft cooing sound and tilted her head, studying the Ravager with obvious fascination. "Look at his coloring," she said, her voice filled with admiration. "Those scales are beautiful. And see how he's watching me? He's curious." "Curious?" Velkus reached her side, trying to position himself between the human and the creature. "That is not curiosity, Ms. Morgan. That is predatory assessment. He is calculating whether you are prey." "No, he's not," Lisa said calmly. She raised her hand and waved at the Ravager. The creature's head followed the movement. "See, he's interested, not aggressive. His spine display is only partial. If he were truly threatened or in hunting mode, they'd be fully extended. And look at his eyes. He's confused by me, not angry." Velkus stared at her. How could she possibly know that? Even his most experienced handlers required years of training to read Ravager body language, and they still made mistakes. This human had been looking at the creature for less than 2 minutes. Peter and Jake had caught up with them now. Jake kept his hand near his weapon, clearly uneasy about the situation. Peter, however, was watching Lisa with an expression that suggested this was not unusual behavior for her. "Lisa has a way with animals," Peter explained to Velkus. "Back on Earth, she worked with apex predators. Bears, big cats, crocodiles. She has a natural gift for understanding them." "This is not an Earth predator," Velkus protested. "This creature evolved on a completely different world, with different evolutionary pressures, different behavioral patterns." "But the basics are universal," Lisa interrupted gently. She finally turned to look at Velkus, and he saw no fear in her eyes. Predators across the galaxy probably share common traits. They need to assess threats, find food, protect territory, and sometimes they're just curious about new things. "This guy isn't scary, Director. He's magnificent." She turned back to the Ravager, which had moved even closer to the barrier. The creature's massive head was now mere inches from the transparent aluminum, its eyes fixed on Lisa. It made a low rumbling sound, deep and resonant. "Is he purring?" Lisa asked, delight clear in her voice. "That is not purring," Velkus said weakly. "That is a threat vocalization." "It doesn't sound threatening to me," Lisa replied. She pressed her palm against the barrier. The Ravager shifted slightly, and for one heart-stopping moment, Velkus thought it would attack the barrier. Instead, the creature moved its head closer, almost as if trying to meet Lisa's hand through the transparent aluminum. The group stood frozen for a long moment. Even Jake seemed mesmerized by the interaction. The Thornback Ravager, one of the most feared creatures in the preserve, was behaving in a way Velkus had never witnessed in 3 decades of managing the facility. It was calm, almost gentle, responding to a human woman who had known it existed for less than 5 minutes. "Perhaps we should continue the tour," Velkus finally managed to say. His voice sounded strained even to his own hearing. "There is much more to see, and I assure you, Ms. Morgan, there will be other fascinating creatures." Lisa reluctantly pulled her hand away from the barrier. The Ravager made a sound that might have been disappointment and watched as she walked away with the group. Velkus glanced back once and saw the creature still standing there, staring in the direction Lisa had gone. As they moved deeper into the preserve, Velkus realized his carefully planned tour had already gone completely off script, and they had seen only the first exhibit. He had a terrible feeling that this visit was going to challenge everything he thought he knew about dangerous creatures and the humans who, impossibly, seemed to understand them better than the experts who had studied them for years. The tour continued through the preserve's main corridors, but Velkus could not shake his unease. Lisa kept pausing at every exhibit, studying each creature with an intensity that made the other staff members nervous. She asked questions that revealed a deep understanding of animal behavior, questions that sometimes stumped even his most experienced handlers. Meanwhile, Peter took notes on a datapad, documenting everything with diplomatic thoroughness. Jake maintained his vigilant security stance, though even he occasionally glanced at the exhibits with obvious interest. They had moved past the acid spitters from Kalmar, the razor swarm colonies, and the void lurkers when the alarms began to sound. Not the emergency alarms, but the maintenance notification system. Velkus checked his communication device and felt his blood run cold. A minor systems malfunction in the Ravager containment area. Nothing serious, the message assured him. Just a small access panel that had opened due to a software glitch. Maintenance drones were already en route, but Velkus knew something that the automatic systems did not. That access panel, while too small for most beings, was large enough for something the size of a human to squeeze through if they were determined enough, and it opened into a space that was technically inside the Ravager's habitat, though separated by additional barriers. "Excuse me for a moment," Velkus said to his guests. "A small technical matter requires my attention. Please remain here with Security Chief Vorn while I handle this." He rushed toward the containment area, his limbs carrying him faster than he had moved in years. When he reached the observation room overlooking the Ravager habitat, his worst fears were confirmed. The panel had indeed opened, and through it he could see movement. The Ravager had noticed the opening immediately and was moving toward it with purpose. Velkus slammed his hand on the emergency lockdown control. Blast doors began to descend throughout the section. Automated defense systems powered up. The preserve's medical team received automatic alerts. Everything that could be done to contain a potential breach was now in motion. But all of these systems would take precious seconds to fully activate. He turned to check on the human delegation through the security cameras, wanting to ensure they were safely away from the area. What he saw made all three of his hearts nearly stop. Lisa was not with the group. She was running down the corridor toward the Ravager containment. Vorn was chasing after her, shouting for her to stop, but she was surprisingly fast for her species. Velkus activated his communicator. "Ms. Morgan, stop immediately. Return to the safe area. This is an emergency situation." Lisa's voice crackled back through the device. "The Ravager is hurt. I saw it on the monitor back there. It's limping. Something's wrong with its front leg." "That is not your concern," Velkus practically shouted. "That creature is extremely dangerous. If it breaches containment," but Lisa had already reached the access panel. Velkus watched in horror through the security feed as she examined the opening. It was indeed small, barely large enough for a maintenance drone, but Lisa was already calculating whether she could fit through it. The Ravager was visible now, moving closer, its massive form casting shadows across the panel opening. "Ms. Morgan, please," Velkus begged. "Step away from that panel. If you go through there, I cannot guarantee your safety. That creature has killed trained handlers wearing full protective gear." Lisa looked directly at the security camera. Her expression was calm, almost serene. "Director, that animal is in pain. Look at how it's moving. There's something embedded in its foreleg. It needs help. We will send handlers," Velkus insisted. "Properly equipped handlers. This is what we train for. By the time you sedate it and send in a team, that wound could be infected," Lisa replied. "Besides, he's not aggressive. He's scared and hurting. I can help him." Before Velkus could issue another protest, Lisa had squeezed through the access panel. She disappeared from the camera's view for a moment, then appeared on the interior habitat cameras. She was inside the containment area, not in the main habitat but in a maintenance corridor that ran alongside it, separated only by reinforced bars that a determined Ravager could easily bend or break. The Ravager saw her immediately. Its head swung toward her, those predatory eyes focusing with laser intensity. The creature's spines rose to half extension. It took a step toward her, then another. Lisa stood perfectly still. "She's going to die," Vorn whispered beside Velkus. The security chief had arrived in the observation room, along with Peter and Jake. Jake had drawn his weapon, though everyone knew it would be useless against the Ravager's armored hide. But Lisa did something that defied all logic. She began making soft clicking sounds with her tongue. The rhythm was steady, almost musical. At the same time, she slowly lowered herself into a crouching position, making herself smaller, less threatening. She kept her eyes on the Ravager but didn't stare directly at it. Instead, she looked at it from the side, glancing away periodically. The Ravager paused. Its head tilted slightly, a gesture of confusion. The clicking sound seemed to interest it. The creature had probably never heard anything like it before. It took another step closer, and Velkus could see the wound Lisa had mentioned. There was indeed something embedded in the creature's foreleg, a piece of metallic debris that must have fallen from the habitat's ceiling structure. Blood oozed around the injury. Lisa saw it too. She spoke softly, her voice carrying through the audio feeds. "Hey there, big guy. That looks like it hurts, doesn't it? Let me help you with that. I promise I won't hurt you. I just want to make it better." The words meant nothing to the Ravager, which had no translator implant and could not understand human language, but the tone carried across species barriers. It was gentle, soothing, completely non-threatening. The Ravager moved closer to the bars separating them, close enough now that it could easily reach through and grab Lisa if it chose to. Instead, it simply watched her, its spine slowly lowered back down. The aggressive posture eased. After what felt like an eternity but was probably only 2 minutes, the Ravager extended its wounded leg toward the bars, as if showing Lisa the source of its pain. "That's right," Lisa murmured. "Show me where it hurts, good boy. You're such a good boy, aren't you?" Velkus watched in absolute disbelief as Lisa slowly reached into her pack and pulled out a small medical kit. Every human carried one, apparently, a habit from their Deathworld where injuries could happen anywhere, anytime. She opened it carefully, making sure every movement was slow and visible. She pulled out antiseptic, bandages, and a pair of small extraction forceps. "I'm going to fix this now," Lisa said to the Ravager. "It might hurt a little bit, but then it will feel much better. Trust me, okay?" She reached through the bars. The Ravager could have bitten her arm off in a single snap of its jaws. Every person watching held their breath. Lisa's fingers touched the creature's scales and it flinched slightly but did not pull away. She examined the wound gently, feeling around the embedded debris. Then, with steady hands, she gripped the metal fragment with her forceps and pulled. The Ravager made a low rumbling sound and its body tensed. Lisa kept making those soft clicking sounds, her other hand stroking the creature's scales in a gentle rhythm. The debris came free and dark blood flowed more freely for a moment. Lisa quickly applied antiseptic, her movements practiced and efficient. She packed the wound with healing gel from her kit and wrapped it with a bandage that would probably fall off within hours but would protect the injury long enough for the Preserve's proper medical team to treat it. "There you go," Lisa said softly. "All better now, see? That wasn't so bad, was it?" The Ravager pulled its leg back through the bars. It studied Lisa for a long moment and then did something that made Velkus question his entire understanding of xenobiology. The creature lowered its massive head and gently pressed it against the bars near Lisa's hand. The gesture was unmistakable. It was asking to be touched. Lisa smiled and reached through the bars again. She scratched behind the bony ridges near the Ravager's auditory organs, the same spots she had probably scratched on countless Earth predators. The creature's eyes half closed in obvious pleasure, and that rumbling sound filled the air again, but now it did not sound like a threat. It sounded almost like contentment. "You're not so scary, are you?" Lisa whispered. "You're just a big sweetheart who needed some help." She stayed like that for another minute, petting the galaxy's most feared predator as if it were a domesticated animal. Then she slowly withdrew her hand, gave the Ravager one last smile, and made her way back to the access panel. The creature watched her go, making a sound that could only be described as mournful. When Lisa emerged from the panel back into the corridor, she was immediately surrounded by stunned staff members. Jake looked like he wanted to shake her and hug her at the same time. Peter was already composing what would probably become a legendary diplomatic report. Vorn simply stared at her with all of his eyes wide in shock. Velkus arrived moments later, practically running despite his dignity. "Ms. Morgan," he began, then found he had no words. What could he possibly say? He had just watched a human do the impossible. Lisa brushed some dust off her clothes and smiled at him. "Sorry about that, Director. I know I probably violated about a dozen safety protocols." News of the incident spread through the Preserve staff network faster than Velkus could have imagined. By the time he had returned to his office to file the incident report, his communication device was flooded with messages. Every handler, researcher, and maintenance worker in the facility wanted to know if the rumors were true. Had a human really touched the Thornback Ravager? Had the creature actually allowed it? Was the human injured or dead? Velkus called an emergency staff meeting in the main conference room. His senior team assembled quickly, their expressions ranging from shock to disbelief to pure scientific curiosity. Even the normally unflappable xenopsychologist Crix seemed rattled, her crystalline form flickering with agitated colors. "I need to understand what happened," Velkus began without preamble. "The security footage is clear, but it makes no sense according to everything we know about Ravager behavior. Crix, you have studied predator psychology for 40 years. Explain this to me. Crix's form shifted through several colors before settling on a troubled purple. I cannot explain it, Director. The Ravager should have killed the human instantly, even if we assume it recognized her as non-threatening, which itself is unlikely given the species' aggressive nature. It should not have displayed cooperative behavior. The wound treatment required the creature to suppress every instinct telling it to defend itself from a perceived threat approaching an injury. This level of trust typically requires years of conditioning. Could the human have some form of psychic ability? Suggested Vorn. Perhaps she manipulated the creature's mind? We scanned all 3 humans upon arrival. Medical specialist Lyra reminded them. Standard protocol for Deathworld species. The results showed them as entirely baseline for human physiology. No psychic abilities detected, no unusual neural patterns, no technological implants for mind control. They are, by all measurements, normal examples of their species. Then how? Velkus spread his limbs in frustration. How did she know the Ravager was injured just from watching it move? How did she understand its body language? How did she know what sounds to make and how to approach it? Perhaps, Peter said from the doorway, making several staff members jump in surprise. I can help answer some of those questions. Velkus had not realized the human diplomat had followed them. Mr. Hall, this is a private staff meeting, I understand, Director. But given that my colleagues' actions are the subject of discussion, I thought I might provide some context. Peter entered the room and took a seat, seemingly unbothered by being surrounded by nervous alien staff members. On Earth, humans have spent thousands of years living alongside dangerous predators. We learned to read them, understand them, and eventually domesticate many of them. Lisa has a natural talent for this, but every human child learns basic animal behavior as part of growing up. Every child? Crix's form flickered with interest. You teach predator psychology to children? We call it common sense, Peter replied with a slight smile. You learn not to approach a growling dog. You learn that a cat with flattened ears is scared or angry. You learn how to move slowly around wildlife so you don't startle them. For us, it's survival knowledge passed down through generations. For Lisa, she took it further and made it her life's work. Velkus was still trying to process this information when his communication device alerted him to an update from the medical team. He pulled up the report and felt his confusion deepen. The Ravager is behaving unusually. It has positioned itself near the location where Ms. Morgan was and appears to be waiting. Heart rate is elevated but not in a stress pattern. Chemical analysis suggests a state of anticipation rather than aggression. It's waiting for her to come back. Lisa's voice came from the corridor. She entered the conference room with Jake close behind her. I noticed he seemed lonely in that habitat. Has he always been kept alone? Ravagers are solitary creatures, Velkus protested. They do not form social bonds. In the wild, maybe, Lisa agreed. But in captivity, animals often behave differently. Isolation can cause stress even in species that prefer solitude in their natural environment. Has anyone considered that some of his aggressive behavior might stem from loneliness rather than natural temperament? The staff exchanged glances. No one had an answer to that question. It had never occurred to any of them. I think, Velkus said slowly, that we should continue the tour, with significantly enhanced supervision. He pointed at Lisa. And you, Ms. Morgan, will stay within arm's reach of at least 2 security personnel at all times. The group moved through the preserve's various sections over the next several hours. They visited the acid marshes of Kelton 6, where creatures dissolved solid metal with their saliva. Lisa studied them intently, noting the way they moved and interacted. She pointed out social hierarchies that the staff had not noticed despite years of observation. She identified which individuals were juveniles based purely on behavioral cues rather than size. In the cryogenic wastes section, housed in a chamber kept at temperatures that would freeze most beings solid in seconds, they observed the frost worms through thermal imaging. Lisa watched the creatures gliding across the ice, and after only 15 minutes, she turned to Velkus with a concerned expression. That one is sick, she said, pointing to a worm that looked identical to the others to Velkus's eyes. How can you possibly know that? Velkus asked. Watch how it moves. See how it favors its left side? And the way it keeps stopping to rest? The others are moving smoothly, but that one is struggling. Something's wrong internally. Velkus was skeptical, but he ordered a full medical scan anyway. The results came back an hour later and confirmed what Lisa had observed. The worm had an internal parasite that early-stage scans had missed. The creature was in the beginning stages of a potentially fatal infection. Treatment was ordered immediately. You saved its life, Lyra told Lisa with something approaching awe in her voice. If we had not caught that infection for another week, the worm would have died. Lisa shrugged. It's just about paying attention. Animals tell you when something is wrong. You just have to learn their language. In the volcanic trenches, a section kept at extreme temperatures where molten rock flowed through channels, they observed the magma serpents. These creatures lived in the lava itself, their scales designed to withstand heat that would vaporize organic matter. One serpent in particular kept ramming itself against the containment barriers, a behavior that had puzzled the handlers for months. He's trying to get to the other serpents, Lisa observed. Look at the habitat design. You have 3 serpents, but they're in separate chambers connected by narrow passages. That one in the middle chamber keeps trying to reach the ones on either side. I think he's male and those are females. He's trying to reach them for mating. Magma serpents are territorial, Vorn objected. Multiple adults in close proximity leads to fatal combat. During certain seasons, yes, Lisa agreed. But have you tested their hormone levels recently? I bet they're in a breeding cycle. Their behavior changes during breeding season. Instead of being territorial, they actively seek each other out. What looks like aggressive barrier ramming is actually breeding behavior. Tests were ordered. Lisa was correct. The serpents were indeed in breeding condition, something the staff had not detected because magma serpent breeding cycles were poorly understood. The preserve had never successfully bred them in captivity because they had never recognized the signs that indicated readiness to mate. With each habitat they visited, the same pattern emerged. Lisa would observe the creatures for a short time, then identify something that the preserve's experts had missed. She noticed signs of stress, indicators of illness, evidence of emotional states that the staff had not believed the creatures capable of experiencing. She pointed out enrichment opportunities and suggested habitat modifications that would improve the animal's quality of life. By the end of the day, Velkas's entire worldview had been shaken. His staff members were taking notes on Lisa's observations, asking questions, seeking her advice. This human, who had arrived only hours ago, was teaching them things about their own animals that years of study had not revealed. During a break in the tour, Velkas found himself standing beside Lisa at an observation window overlooking the main conservation habitats. "Ms. Morgan," he said quietly, "you have made me realize something troubling. We have been managing these creatures as problems to be contained, rather than as living beings to be understood. We thought we were experts, but we were merely jailers." Lisa turned to him with a kind expression. "You've done the best you could with what you knew, Director. But every species communicates differently, and it takes time to learn their language. On Earth, we've had thousands of years to figure out our planet's creatures. You're dealing with animals from hundreds of different worlds, each with unique biology and behavior. It's an impossible task for any one species to master alone. Perhaps," Velkas said thoughtfully, "that is why the galaxy needs humans. You do not see monsters when you look at dangerous creatures. What do you see?" Lisa smiled and looked out at the habitats below, where countless species lived in carefully controlled environments. "I see animals trying to survive in strange places. I see beings that are scared, confused, or just trying to..." The third day of the human delegation's visit began like any other morning at the preserve. Velkas arrived at his office early, reviewing the schedule for another round of habitat tours. Lisa had already made remarkable progress with the staff, conducting informal training sessions where she taught basic animal behavior principles. The handlers were beginning to see the creatures in new ways, and incident reports had already decreased. Everything seemed to be going better than Velkas could have hoped. Then the alarm started. The first indication of trouble came at exactly 0847 station time. A cascade systems failure in the Predator wing, the preserve's maximum security section. Velkas's communication device erupted with emergency notifications. Multiple containment breaches, power failures, backup systems not responding. Every handler's worst nightmare was unfolding in real time. Velkas ran from his office toward the command center, his limbs carrying him as fast as they could move. Staff members rushed past him in controlled panic, heading to emergency stations. The corridor lights had switched to red emergency mode, and the wailing of sirens filled the air. He burst into the command center where Vorn was already coordinating the response. Status report, Velkus demanded. 12 containment breaches in the Predator wing, Vorn replied, his multiple appendages working across several control panels at once. We have a Void Stalker loose in Sector 7, Shadow Panthers in the maintenance tunnels, and worst of all, the Dreadclaw Alpha has escaped its habitat. It appears to be actively disabling security measures. Velkus felt his blood run cold. The Dreadclaw Alpha was the most dangerous creature in the entire preserve. It was intelligent, massive, and had never been successfully contained for more than 2 years. The creature always found ways to exploit weaknesses in its confinement. The current containment had lasted 23 months, their longest success yet. Now it was loose. Initiate full station lockdown, Velkus ordered. Seal all blast doors. Deploy automated defense systems. And get the emergency response teams here now. Already done, Director, Vorn confirmed. But the response teams are 40 minutes away at best. The Alpha has damaged several door controls. We are losing sections of the preserve to manual override. On the security monitors, Velkus could see the chaos unfolding. The Void Stalker, a creature that could phase through solid matter, was materializing and dematerializing through the walls, terrifying staff members who scrambled to evacuate. The Shadow Panthers, sleek 8-legged predators from the Dark Nebula, had cornered a group of maintenance workers in a dead-end corridor. And somewhere in the maze of passages, the Dreadclaw Alpha was moving with terrible purpose. Where are the humans? Velkus asked suddenly, realizing with horror that the delegation had been scheduled for a tour in a section adjacent to the Predator wing. Vorn pulled up their location on the tracking system. They are in Observation Corridor 12 with 2 guards. The blast door sealed them in when the lockdown initiated. They are safe for now, but they are trapped between the Predator wing and the maintenance sections where the Shadow Panthers are hunting. Velkus pulled up the video feed from Corridor 12. Peter, Lisa, and Jake stood with guards Crix and Nella, watching the emergency notifications flash on the wall displays. Lisa was studying a station map on her datapad, her expression focused and calm. Too calm for someone trapped in a facility where deadly predators were loose. Velkus activated the communication channel to their location. Mr. Hall, Ms. Morgan, Mr. Bennett, please remain calm and stay exactly where you are. Emergency response teams are en route. The blast doors will protect you until they arrive. Lisa looked up at the camera. Director, what creatures are loose? What species? That information is not relevant to your safety, Ms. Morgan. Please just stay where you are. Director, I might be able to help, Lisa insisted. What species? Velkus hesitated. Part of him wanted to dismiss the idea immediately. But he had seen what Lisa could do. He had watched her handle the Thornback Ravager, seen her identify problems that his experts had missed. Still, this was different. These were multiple predators, loose in an unfamiliar environment, probably frightened and definitely dangerous. A Void Stalker, 3 Shadow Panthers, and the Dreadclaw Alpha, Velkus finally admitted, along with several smaller species. They are confused and potentially aggressive. The situation is extremely volatile. Lisa studied her datapad, likely pulling up information on each species. The workers cornered by the Shadow Panthers, are they armed? Maintenance staff are not equipped with weapons, Vorn reported. They have basic defensive tools only. They need to get out of there soon, Lisa said quietly. Panthers are pack hunters. They'll attack once they finish assessing the threat. How long until the response teams arrive? 35 minutes, Velkus admitted. Lisa looked at Peter and Jake. Some silent communication passed between them. Jake checked his weapon and nodded. Peter looked worried but resigned. Then Lisa turned back to the camera. Director Velkus, I need you to open the blast door. I can help those workers and possibly calm down the other creatures before anyone gets hurt. Absolutely not. Velkus's voice was sharper than he intended. Ms. Morgan, I cannot allow you to risk your life. You saw one creature under controlled circumstances. This is an active emergency with multiple unknowns. Director, those workers will die if someone doesn't help them. Your response team won't arrive in time. The creatures are scared and confused, which makes them more dangerous. I understand these risks, but I also understand animal behavior. I can do this. Jake stepped forward into the camera's view. I'll go with her, Director. I'm trained for hostile situations. I can provide cover while she works. This is insane, Velkus protested. But even as he said it, he was pulling up the feeds showing the cornered workers. The Shadow Panthers were getting closer, their body language shifting from curious to predatory. He checked the automated defense systems in that sector, They were designed to incapacitate, not kill, which meant they would take time to be effective. Time those workers did not have. Peter spoke up. "Director, I know this seems reckless, but I've worked with Lisa for 3 years. She's the best at what she does. If she says she can help, I believe her. And right now those workers need someone." Velkus looked at his command staff. Vorn's expression was unreadable. Lyra looked terrified. Crix's crystalline form was flickering rapidly, a sign of intense internal debate. They all knew the situation was desperate. They all knew the workers were running out of time. "If I allow this," Velkus said slowly, "you follow my directions exactly. You wear emergency locator beacons. You maintain constant communication. And if I order you to retreat, you retreat immediately. Is that understood?" "Understood," Lisa agreed. Jake nodded his confirmation. Velkus made the decision that would either save lives or haunt him forever. "Vorn, open blast door 12. Crix and Nella, you accompany them with full defensive equipment. Stay behind Ms. Morgan and Mr. Bennett, provide support, but let them work." "Director, are you certain?" Vorn asked. "No," Velkus admitted, "but I am certain that doing nothing will result in deaths. At least this way we are trying something." He watched the monitors as the blast door slowly lifted. Lisa stepped through first, Jake right beside her with his weapon ready. The 2 guards followed, their defensive shields activated. The small group moved into the corridor beyond, heading toward the maintenance tunnels where the Shadow Panthers waited. Velkus pulled up every available camera along their route. "Ms. Morgan, the Panthers are approximately 200 meters ahead of you. They have not yet noticed your approach." "Good." Lisa's voice came through the communicator. "I'm going to try to get their attention and draw them away from the workers. Jake, stay ready, but don't shoot unless absolutely necessary. The sound and energy discharge could startle them into attacking." "Understood," Jake confirmed. They moved through the corridors carefully, Lisa in the lead despite every survival instinct Velkus possessed, screaming that the trained security officer should be in front. But he had learned enough about humans to know that Lisa needed to be first. The animals would respond to her, not to Jake's weapons or the guards' defensive shields. As they rounded a corner, the Shadow Panthers came into view. 3 of them, each the size of a large earth tiger but with 8 legs and bodies that seemed to absorb light itself. They were beautiful and terrifying at the same time. The trapped maintenance workers huddled together behind a fallen piece of equipment, their eyes wide with terror. Lisa stopped walking. She held up a hand, signaling the others to halt as well. Then she did something that made Velkus's heart skip in rhythm. She sat down on the floor cross-legged, making herself small and non-threatening. She was now at eye level with the predators. "Here we go," she murmured, and began to make soft clicking sounds just as she had with the Ravager. The Shadow Panthers noticed Lisa immediately. 3 pairs of glowing eyes turned toward her, their attention shifting from the cornered workers to this new presence. The lead panther, slightly larger than the others, took a step forward. Its body language screamed caution, uncertainty, and the dangerous potential for violence that comes when a predator feels threatened. Lisa remained perfectly still in her seated position. She kept her hands visible, palms down on her thighs. Her breathing was slow and steady. She did not make direct eye contact with any of the panthers, instead looking at them from the side, glancing away periodically. Velkus watched through the camera feed, his entire body tense with anticipation of the attack he was certain would come. "Easy there," Lisa said softly. Her voice was barely above a whisper, but the communicator picked it up clearly. "You're scared, aren't you? This place is strange and loud and confusing. I know. All those alarms and lights. Must be terrifying." The lead panther tilted its head, studying her. One of its 8 legs shifted forward, then back, an uncertain gesture. The creature was trying to decide if Lisa was prey, threat, or something else entirely. Behind it, the other 2 panthers remained focused on the workers, but their attention was divided now. Lisa slowly reached into her pack. Jake tensed, his hand tightening on his weapon. The lead panther's body went rigid, ready to pounce. But Lisa's movement was so gradual, so calm, that it created no sense of danger. She pulled out a ration bar, part of the standard supplies every visitor carried. She unwrapped it carefully, the sound of the packaging oddly loud in the tense silence. "You're probably hungry too," Lisa said. "When was the last time you ate? Bet it wasn't today with all this chaos." She broke off a piece of the ration bar and tossed it gently toward the lead panther. It landed about 2 meters in front of the creature. The panther stared at the food. Its nostrils flared, scenting it. The other two panthers moved closer, interested in this development. The lead panther stepped forward cautiously and sniffed the food piece. Then, after a moment of consideration, it ate it. "Good," Lisa murmured. "See, I'm not here to hurt you. Just want to help." She broke off 2 more pieces and tossed them to the other panthers. They caught them in midair with surprising grace, and the tension in the corridor decreased noticeably. "Ms. Morgan," Velkus said through the communicator, keeping his voice as calm as possible, "the workers need to evacuate while you have the panthers' attention." "In a minute," Lisa replied. "If the workers move now, the panthers' hunting instinct might trigger. Let me get them a little more relaxed first." She continued, breaking off pieces of the ration bar, tossing them to the panthers. With each piece, she threw it slightly closer to herself. The panthers followed the food, gradually moving away from the trapped workers and toward Lisa. It was brilliant and terrifying at the same time. She was making herself the focus of their attention, deliberately becoming the most interesting thing in the corridor. When the panthers were a safe distance from the workers, Lisa spoke again. "Crixnella, slowly help the workers move past us. No sudden movements. Stay calm. The panthers are focused on me right now." The 2 guards moved carefully, activating their shields at minimal power to avoid startling the creatures. They helped the workers to their feet and began guiding them back down the corridor. The panthers' ears swiveled toward the movement, but Lisa immediately made another clicking sound, drawing their attention back to her. She pulled out a second ration bar. The lead panther was now less than 3 meters from her, close enough to attack in a single leap, but its body language had shifted from aggressive to curious. It sat down, mimicking Lisa's posture in an odd way. The other 2 panthers followed suit. "You're pack animals, aren't you?" Lisa said, more to herself than to the creatures. "You work together, hunt together. You probably feel lost without your territory and your routine. I understand. Change is hard." Once the workers were safely past, Velkus exhaled a breath he had not realized he was holding. "Ms. Morgan, the workers are clear. You should retreat now." "Not yet," Lisa said. "If I leave them agitated, they might attack the next person they see. Give me a few more minutes." She pulled out a small ball from her pack, something that Velkus recognized as a human toy for their domesticated animals. Lisa rolled it gently across the floor. The lead panther's eyes followed it with intense focus. When it stopped rolling, the panther looked back at Lisa with what could only be described as confusion. "Go get it," Lisa encouraged, making a gesture toward the ball. The panther stood up and walked to the ball. It sniffed it, then gently batted it with one paw. The ball rolled back toward Lisa. Despite the dire situation, Velkus heard someone in the command center make a sound of amazement. The deadly shadow panther was playing. Lisa rolled the ball again. This time, all 3 panthers went after it, their movements becoming more playful than predatory. They batted it between themselves, their earlier fear and aggression dissolving into something resembling enjoyment. They were still dangerous, still powerful predators, but the immediate threat had passed. "Director," Lisa said while the panthers were distracted, "these guys need to go back to their habitat soon, but they're calm now. Can you guide us toward their containment area?" "I think they'll follow me." It was insane. It was impossible. But Velkus gave the directions anyway. Lisa stood up slowly and the panthers watched her but did not threaten. She began walking, and incredibly the 3 shadow panthers followed her like domesticated animals following their owner. Jake and the guards trailed behind, weapons ready but unused. They made their way through the corridors, Lisa leading a procession of deadly predators back to their habitat. When they arrived at the containment area, the door had been damaged in the escape but was still partially functional. Lisa walked right up to the entrance and stepped aside, gesturing toward it. "Home," she said simply, "safe and quiet. No more scary alarms." The lead panther looked at the habitat entrance, then at Lisa, then back at the entrance. After a moment, it walked inside. The other 2 followed. As soon as they were in, Velkus activated the emergency seals and the door slammed shut with a solid thunk. "One down," Lisa said, brushing some dust off her clothes. "What's next?" Velkus pulled up the status board. "The Void Stalker is still loose in Sector 7. It has been phasing through walls, avoiding all attempts at containment. And the Dreadclaw Alpha is in the central atrium, and it appears to have gathered several other escaped creatures around it." "The Void Stalker first," Lisa decided. "What can you tell me about its behavior patterns?" As they moved toward Sector 7, Vorn provided the information. Void stalkers are curious creatures despite their fearsome reputation. They hunt by phasing through solid matter to surprise prey. They can only maintain partial phase for extended periods. Full phase requires significant energy. So it's probably tired from all the phasing during the escape, Lisa reasoned. And curious means we can use that. It will want to investigate unusual things. They found the Void Stalker in a storage area, its form flickering between solid and translucent as it phased in and out of reality. Staff members had evacuated the area, leaving the creature alone and confused. When Lisa entered the room, it immediately focused on her, its form solidifying slightly. "Hey there," Lisa said softly. "You're a long way from home, aren't you?" The Void Stalker circled her, moving through a solid wall as if it were not there, then emerging on the other side. It was testing her, trying to understand what she was. Lisa remained calm, turning slowly to keep it in her peripheral vision but never staring directly at it. "You know what I think?" Lisa continued talking in that soothing tone. "I think you're exhausted. All that phasing takes energy, and you've been doing it for hours now. You need rest." She sat down again, making herself small and non-threatening. The Void Stalker continued circling, but its movements were slowing. Lisa was right. It was tired. She pulled out a thermal blanket from her pack, part of the emergency supplies. She spread it on the floor beside her. "Warm," she said. "Comfortable, safe, no one is going to hurt you here." The Void Stalker stopped moving. Its form solidified completely, and Velkus realized with shock that he could now see just how exhausted the creature was. Its body was trembling slightly from the effort of maintaining phase for so long. Lisa patted the thermal blanket beside her. The creature approached slowly. Then, in a movement that defied all logic, it lay down on the blanket next to Lisa. She reached out and gently touched its head. The Void Stalker made a sound like a deep purr and closed its eyes. "Jake, can you call for a transport cage?" Lisa asked. "This one is too tired to phase. We can move it safely now." Within minutes, a team arrived with a specialized containment unit. The Void Stalker barely stirred as they carefully loaded it in. It was asleep, trusting Lisa completely. "Two down," Jake said with something like awe in his voice. "How are you doing this?" "They're just scared animals," Lisa replied. "Every creature wants the same basic things: safety, food, rest, and to be understood. These guys didn't escape because they're evil or aggressive. They escaped because something failed and they're trying to survive in a confusing situation. We just need to help them feel safe again." The central atrium was the heart of the preserve, a massive space with transparent aluminum walls offering views into multiple habitat sections. It was designed as a showcase area where visitors could appreciate the diversity of life housed in the facility. Now it had become the stage for something unprecedented in the history of the Galactic Biological Preserve. The Dreadclaw Alpha stood in the center of the atrium, its massive form commanding attention. The creature was the size of a small transport shuttle, covered in dark scales that seemed to absorb light. Its claws, which gave the species its name, were each longer than Lisa was tall. Around it, arranged in an almost protective circle, were the other escaped creatures: a spike-tail lizard, two venom hoppers, a juvenile stormbird, and several smaller species that had taken advantage of the containment breach. Velkus watched through the security feeds as Lisa approached the entrance to the atrium. The Dreadclaw Alpha noticed her immediately. Its head, adorned with bony crests, turned toward her with frightening intelligence in its eyes. This was not a simple predator operating on instinct. This was a thinking, planning creature that had outsmarted the preserve's best security systems twice before. "Lisa," Peter's voice came through the communicator, concerned and tense. "That thing is smart. Scary smart. It might see through whatever approach you're planning." "Good," Lisa replied. "Intelligence means we can communicate better. It can understand complex situations and make decisions beyond simple fight-or-flight responses. That actually makes this easier." She entered the atrium slowly, her movements visible to everyone through the multiple camera angles. Jake followed at a distance, his weapon lowered but ready. The Dreadclaw Alpha watched her approach, its body language unreadable. The other creatures around it became agitated, sensing the Alpha's focused attention. Lisa stopped about 10 meters from the group. She did not sit this time. Instead, she stood and met the Alpha's gaze directly. With the Shadow Panthers, she had avoided eye contact to appear non-threatening. With the Void Stalker, she had made herself small and passive. But with the Dreadclaw Alpha, she needed to communicate as an equal. The creature was intelligent enough to recognize respect and confidence. "Hello?" Lisa said clearly. "I know you're confused. All the alarms, the chaos, the strange noises. You got scared and you got out. You're protecting the others now because that's what alphas do. You take care of your pack." The Dreadclaw Alpha tilted its head, a gesture that reminded Velkus of how the Thornback Ravager had reacted to Lisa. It was the posture of a creature trying to understand something unexpected. "I'm not here to hurt you or any of them," Lisa continued. She gestured toward the gathered creatures. "But you can't stay here. This isn't a good place for you. Too open, too exposed. Your real habitat has shelter, food, privacy, safe spaces where you can rest without worrying about threats." She sat down cross-legged on the floor. The move was deliberate, calculated. She was showing vulnerability, demonstrating that she did not see the Alpha as a threat even though it absolutely was one. The Dreadclaw Alpha took a step toward her, its massive claws clicking against the atrium floor. "That's right," Lisa said softly. "Come check me out. I'm not afraid of you. You're magnificent, you know that. Probably the smartest creature I've met since arriving at this preserve." The Alpha moved closer and the other creatures shifted nervously. They were taking their cues from their temporary leader, watching to see how it would react. The Alpha lowered its head, bringing its face close to Lisa. Its breath washed over her, hot and carrying the scent of a carnivore. One wrong move and it could kill her instantly. Lisa slowly raised her hand and placed it on the Alpha's snout. The creature's eyes widened slightly in surprise. Velkus heard gasps from multiple staff members in the command center. No one had ever touched a Dreadclaw Alpha voluntarily. Even sedated, they were handled with extreme caution and mechanical equipment. "You're not a monster," Lisa said gently. "You're just trying to survive in a place that doesn't understand you. But I understand. I see you, and I promise if you come with me back to your habitat, I'll make sure they treat you better. No more treating you like a problem to be contained. You're a living being with needs and feelings. You deserve respect." For a long moment, nothing happened. The entire preserve seemed to hold its breath. Then the Dreadclaw Alpha did something that would become the most watched recording in the galactic community's xenobiological archives. It lowered itself to the ground, lying down in front of Lisa in a posture of submission and trust. The other creatures, seeing their temporary Alpha stand down, began to relax as well. Lisa smiled and scratched behind the Alpha's crest, in the spots where sensors indicated nerve clusters that likely responded to positive stimulation. The massive creature's eyes half-closed in what could only be contentment. One by one, the other creatures approached. Lisa greeted each one, speaking softly, touching them gently. The spike-tail lizard rubbed against her leg. The venom hoppers settled near her feet. The juvenile stormbird ruffled its feathers and cooed. The crisis was over. Not with weapons or sedatives or emergency response teams, but with patience, understanding, and compassion. When the emergency teams finally arrived, their weapons and containment gear ready, they found Lisa sitting peacefully in the central atrium, surrounded by the creatures that should have torn the preserve apart. The Dreadclaw Alpha's head rested in her lap as she continued to scratch behind its crests. The aftermath of the incident unfolded over the following days. The story of what happened spread through the galactic networks at incredible speed. Representatives from dozens species arrived at the preserve, demanding access to security footage, detailed reports, and explanations that made scientific sense. What they got instead was evidence that challenged fundamental assumptions about dangerous fauna management. Velkus found himself giving the same presentation repeatedly to different delegations. Each time he showed the footage of Lisa calming the Shadow Panthers, soothing the Void Stalker, and earning the trust of the Dreadclaw Alpha. Each time, the assembled representatives reacted with the same mixture of disbelief and fascination. The humans were asked to explain their methods. Lisa, Peter, and Jake found themselves at the center of what quickly became an interstellar phenomenon. Lisa gave presentations about animal behavior that packed the preserve's main conference hall beyond capacity. She explained concepts that were apparently common knowledge on Earth but revolutionary to most spacefaring species. On Earth, Lisa explained to a room full of xenobiologists and behavioral specialists, humans domesticated wolves into dogs over 20,000 years ago. We turned one of our planet's apex predators into our companions. We did the same with cats, horses, cattle, birds, and dozens of other species. This wasn't about domination. It was about partnership and mutual benefit. She showed images from Earth: dogs playing with human children, cats sleeping peacefully in homes, horses carrying riders across vast distances, birds trained to hunt alongside humans. To the assembled aliens, these images were shocking. The humans kept predators in their homes. They let their children play with animals that had teeth and claws. They formed emotional bonds with creatures that could potentially harm them. You see danger where we see opportunity for connection, Lisa continued. Every species has different needs, different communication styles, different ways of expressing fear or trust or affection. On Earth, we learn to read these signals. We learned that aggression usually comes from fear or need. We learned that most creatures prefer peace to violence when their basic requirements are met. We learned that patience and understanding accomplish more than force and containment. Crix, the xenopsychologist, raised a crystalline appendage. But Ms. Morgan, you demonstrated these skills with creatures from worlds you had never visited, species you had never encountered before. How is this possible? Lisa smiled. Because the fundamentals are universal. Body language, vocalizations, behavioral patterns. They vary in specifics but follow similar principles across species. A creature backing away is probably scared or uncertain. A creature with raised defensive structures is feeling threatened. A creature making soft sounds versus harsh sounds is likely trying to communicate different intentions. You learn to read the patterns. We have studied these creatures for years, another scientist protested. We have advanced degrees, sophisticated equipment, detailed behavioral databases. Yet you understood them in minutes. This seems impossible. Not impossible, Peter interjected. Just different training. Every human child on Earth learns basic animal behavior as part of growing up. We teach them to read dog body language so they don't get bitten. We teach them that a hissing cat needs space. We teach them how to be calm around wild animals. For Lisa, she took it further and made it her career. But the foundation is something most humans learn in childhood. The revelations continued as more information about Earth emerged. The aliens learned about humanity's long history of coexisting with dangerous wildlife. They learned about conservation efforts, rehabilitation programs, and the human tendency to try to save species rather than eliminate them. They learned about the human emotional capacity to bond with. 6 months had passed since the escape incident that changed everything at the Zarathian Galactic Biological Preserve. The facility that once operated on principles of maximum security and minimal interaction had transformed into something the galaxy had never seen before. A place where dangerous creatures were understood rather than feared, where the barriers between species were built on respect rather than terror. Belkis walked through the main corridor. Observing the changes that had become so normal, he sometimes forgot how revolutionary they were. Handlers moved through habitats with confidence but without fear, reading the body language of creatures that had once required remote operation and sedation. Enrichment activities happened throughout the day. The creatures were calmer, healthier, and displayed behaviors that rewrote the scientific literature on their species. The preserve had become famous across the galaxy. Research teams arrived weekly from every corner of known space, all wanting to learn what was being called the human approach to xenobiology. The waiting list for handler training positions was years long. Every major biological preserve in the galactic community had requested consultation services. Some had even hired humans directly, seeking their unique perspective on animal behavior. Lisa had become something of a legend. Her training programs were considered the gold standard for dangerous fauna management. She had trained 200 handlers during her time at the preserve, and each one had gone on to implement her methods at their home facilities. The ripple effect was transforming how civilization treated the dangerous creatures they studied and protected. Belkis found Lisa in her usual spot, working with the thornback ravager she had nicknamed Spike. The massive creature was lying on its side, allowing Lisa to inspect a scar from an old injury. The animal made a low rumbling sound, the purr-like vocalization that had baffled experts before Lisa explained it, indicated contentment. "How is he today?" Belkis asked, approaching the habitat barrier. Though the barrier remained in place for protocol reasons, everyone knew that Lisa could walk into that habitat safely whenever she wanted. Spike would probably be excited to see her. "He's doing great," Lisa replied, running her hand along the creature's scales. "The scar tissue has healed nicely. No signs of inflammation or discomfort. I think we can reduce his anti-inflammatory medication by half." You have accomplished something I would have said was impossible 6 months ago, Velkus said. This creature that killed 17 handlers across multiple worlds now trusts you completely. How does it feel to be the first being to successfully bond with a Thornback Ravager? Lisa smiled. It feels like I'm finally doing what I was meant to do. But Velkus, I'm not special. Any of your handlers could do this if they learned to see the animals differently. Spike wasn't the problem. The approach was the problem. Perhaps, Velkus conceded, but you showed us a better way. The entire galaxy is learning from what you have taught here. Lisa stood and dusted off her hands. Speaking of which, I have a training session with the new group of handlers in an hour. We're working with the Plasma Bear today. He arrived last week from the quarantine facility. The Plasma Bear was a recent acquisition and a controversial one. The species had been scheduled for extinction after a population of them destroyed a mining colony on their homeworld. They were considered too dangerous, too aggressive, too destructive to coexist with civilization. But Lisa had argued passionately against the extinction order, claiming the bear's behavior was a response to their habitat being destroyed by mining operations. She had convinced the Galactic Ethics Committee to give her a chance to prove the species could be safely maintained if properly understood. Velkus followed Lisa to the new habitat that had been constructed specifically for the Plasma Bear. The creature was enormous, covered in fur that crackled with electrical energy. It could discharge enough electricity to disable a small spacecraft. Standing at the observation platform was a group of 20 new handlers, all watching the bear with obvious nervousness. Good morning, everyone, Lisa greeted them cheerfully. Who can tell me what they observe about our new friend here? A young handler from a species Velkus did not recognize raised a tentacle. It appears agitated. The electrical discharge is frequent. The pacing pattern suggests stress. Excellent observation, Lisa praised. Now, why might it be stressed? New environment, another handler suggested. Unfamiliar surroundings. No established territory. Exactly right, Lisa confirmed. This bear was taken from the only home it knew, transported across space, and placed in a completely foreign environment. Of course it's stressed. So what do we do about it? She pulled out a large ball, heavily reinforced and designed to withstand electrical discharge. We give it something to focus on besides its anxiety. We give it enrichment, play, positive stimulation. Watch. Lisa activated the habitat access door. Several handlers gasped. Velkus felt his heart's rate increase despite knowing that Lisa knew what she was doing. She entered the habitat calmly, the reinforced ball under one arm. The Plasma Bear immediately noticed her, its electrical discharge intensifying. Easy there, Lisa said in that soothing tone that had become her trademark. I'm not here to hurt you. Just want to play. You like to play, right? All bears like to play. She rolled the ball across the habitat floor. The Plasma Bear watched it suspiciously. Lisa sat down and waited. 1 minute passed. 2 minutes. The handlers watched in complete silence. Then slowly the bear approached the ball. It sniffed it, touched it with one massive paw. The ball rolled away from the touch and the bear's interest visibly increased. What happened next would become another legendary recording in the xenobiological archives. The Plasma Bear, the creature so dangerous its entire species had been marked for extinction, began to play. It batted the ball back and forth, chasing it around the habitat. Its electrical discharge decreased as it focused on the activity. When the ball rolled near Lisa, the bear brought it to her, dropping it at her feet in an unmistakable gesture. It wanted her to throw it again. Lisa obliged, and the game continued. Within 20 minutes, the bear was calm, its stress indicators dropping to normal levels. When Lisa finally left the habitat, she turned to the assembled handlers with a satisfied expression. That species nearly went extinct because no one tried to understand them, she said. They were labeled as monsters, as problems to be eliminated. But they're just bears. Intelligent, playful, social bears who need mental stimulation and positive interaction. Given the right environment and approach, they're no more dangerous than any other large predator, which is to say they deserve respect, but not fear. The training session continued for another 2 hours. Lisa taught the handlers how to read the subtle signs of animal emotion and intention. She demonstrated de-escalation techniques. She showed them how to build trust gradually. Most importantly, she taught them to see the creatures as individuals with unique personalities and needs, rather than as generic representatives of dangerous species. After the session, Velkus found himself alone with Lisa in her office. The small space was covered with images from Earth, showing humans interacting with their planet's diverse wildlife. Dogs, cats, horses, elephants, dolphins, even large predators like lions and bears. Every image showed the same thing: connection between species built on mutual respect and understanding. "Your time here is almost finished," Velkus said. "In 2 weeks you return to Earth. The staff is already mourning your departure." Lisa smiled. "I'll miss this place too. But you don't need me anymore, Velkus. Your handlers have learned the methods. They're teaching others. The culture here has changed fundamentally. This preserve will continue to improve long after I'm gone. Because of you," Velkus insisted. "You changed everything.